how we used to measure our marketing analytics and reporting was typically done through cookies, and then we've progressed into what we would call multi-touch attribution. So I'll speak a little bit about MTA, why it's no longer possible. And I think it's perfect timing. We have Lars here, who's actually going to continue on to this conversation talking about the deprecation of cookies and how we can really plan forward to mitigate that. And there's an awful lot of things that we can do as marketers to mitigate for that. But I'm going to take a different stance on that, maybe a little bit of a controversial stance, really challenging our approach to marketing analytics and to reporting. But just a couple of show of hands before we dig into it. Is anyone here like a campaign manager in Facebook ads, Google Analytics on a day-to-day basis? Cool, we've got a couple. Anyone maybe slightly more senior, not so much in the weeds, but budget allocation, making strategic decisions around where budget goes? Okay, cool. Who has heard about a cookieless world and the deprecation of cookies? Nearly everybody, great. One that I'm going to touch on in a moment is who has a work phone and a personal phone? Half the room. And who in the room has maybe done an awful lot of research about something and then sent it to their partner, and then their partner just made that transaction? I know me right now, I'm actually in a lucky space where I'm building my own home. Me and my partner, we're taking it in turns and buying appliances, right? So this month, it's my turn to buy a dishwasher. So my partner's doing loads of research on dishwashers. And I know at the end of the month, once I get paid, I'm just going to go direct and I'm going to click. But there's an awful lot of research happening before that. So what I'm essentially summarizing here is that all of us now have a cross-device journey. As single consumers, for an awful lot of our online transactions, for everything we do, we browse across multiple devices. For about 3/4 of the room here, we have a personal phone, we've got a work phone, and then we also have a personal laptop and a work laptop. So let's say, for example, in that instance of me researching a dishwasher, I'm maybe on the tram, I'm having a little look on my personal phone, I get to work, I'm doing similar, and then changing each device. For every single interaction, when I'm doing my research, that's an individual cookie. So for reporting and analytics solutions, they're going to see me as an individual, unique user every time I visit from a different device. The second piece on the screen here talks about cross-browser interactions. And essentially, this is kind of similar, right? But we're using Google Chrome, we're using Safari. But one that we also kind of often forget is that within Facebook, if you're navigating through Facebook, you open up an ad, often brought to an in-app browser in Facebook. So let's take that as an example. We're in Facebook, we open up an in-app browser within Facebook, we're doing some research. Doesn't feel quite right, so we actually just go back to Chrome on our Android because that feels more comfortable. That session from that ad is going to be noted as 2 distinct cookies in your analytics and attribution solution. And the list goes on. We've got GDPR cookie consents, we've got intelligent tracking prevention within Safari. All of these things combined together really make it no longer possible for us as marketers to stitch a user's full path to purchase. So for an awful lot of us as marketers, for years and decades, we've relied on cookies. We then relied into multi-touch attribution, whether it be last click, whether it be a first touch model, whether it be a full cascaded model. But essentially everything we're trying to do is to stitch a path that is now no longer possible to stitch. As I go through this, if you have a question, please just do raise your hand as you go, because it'd be great to keep this interactive. I did this talk in Dublin on Tuesday, and we had some great questions as we went along. So for an awful lot of us, when we look into maybe GA, if we're using a third-party multi-touch attribution solution, often this is a massive problem we see. So an awful lot of our ad spend is attributed to direct none. And that's because simply the analytics or measurement solution cannot understand the true source of that paid click. And this leads to 2 big challenges. The first one is pretty obvious, right? So we're talking about measurement. Understanding from all of that investment we're putting in, what's the return on that? The easy example is we're investing quite a lot in Facebook, an upper funnel, an upper to mid funnel channel. And when we look at our Google Analytics report, for example, we see that our cost per our CPA or our ROAS is nowhere where we need it to be, right? So maybe our CPA may be $1,000 for something, and where our Google search CPA is $50. But we know that if we deactivate our Facebook spend entirely, we're going to see a massive decrease in investment in branded search, in direct traffic, in Google Shopping, maybe if we're an e-commerce business. So we know that this investment in the mid and upper funnel channels is having a very positive effect on our lower funnel and direct traffic, but we can't quite quantify or understand that. Yes, we're using vanity metrics like click-through rate, maybe using kind of view contents and pixel data within Facebook, but we've no real benchmark to understand what is the quality of traffic coming through my upper and mid funnel channels. That's the same then across budget allocation, right? So when we don't understand measurements, we don't know where to put the dollar. The second one is a little bit more nuanced. So before I worked for SegmentStream, I worked for a company called Mathúin Software. You may be familiar with them, a publicly listed company that really specialized in independent optimization. So bidding algorithms and sit on top of search and social. And I was around over the last kind of 3 to 4 years where we've seen this transformation of smart bidding within Google and Facebook. And I have to tip my hat to the publishers because their innovation when it comes to automated bidding is fantastic. I was involved in bidding trials head-to-head using first-party technology versus the publisher technology, and it was just incredible to see how good the publisher bidding systems were. But the publisher bidding systems rely on conversions as the feedback mechanism of success. So it changes depending on the documentation you read, but a rule of thumb is Facebook and Google need roughly about 30 or 40 conversions in the last 30 days to exit the learning phase, and their algorithms now know who to target, if they're effective, and so on. But just if we take a step back and think about all of the reasons that we now know it's no longer possible to stitch that transaction, think about all of the investment you're driving to your website that's converting, but Facebook and Google are not receiving feedback whether that was a valuable visit or not. So this, to summarize, leads to pretty big challenges here. Facebook and Google are essentially not receiving the feedback based on all that traffic you're sending. The second piece then is that ultimately with this, you're not targeting effectively. You have an awful lot of quality traffic coming to your website, but the publishers and optimization systems don't understand or not receiving that effective feedback to understand if that's a good user, should we target that user again, and so on. At SegmentStream, we're taking it's a completely different approach to this idea of measurement. When I first joined the business, I thought I was joining an attribution solution. When I sat down with my chief product officer and said, we're not attribution, attribution is dead. I thought I'd made a mistake joining SegmentStream. What we're doing at SegmentStream is we're taking first-party on-site behavioral data, essentially your Google Analytics data, and we're plumbing that into BigQuery and applying machine learning algorithms on top of that. Essentially what we're doing is for every single session of your website, we're calculating that user's probability to convert in the future based off that final optimal goal that you have. So for an e-commerce business, that's going to be a purchase. Maybe you're in the automotive, that may be a form fill request for a test drive, and so on. This can be applied across B2B as well as e-com. So for every single session on site, once that session is ended, we're calculating that user's probability to convert in the future. This is just an idea of what we had before. And this is the second iteration now when we looked at the idea of applying modeled conversions through this. So in this example here, we can see that we've come through on Facebook, on mobile, we've then come through on Google, and then finally there's been some research happening on desktop Safari. The dotted line you see coming across the grid there is what we call internally essentially a probabilistic threshold. So we calculate a probability for at the end of every single session, And based off the probability, we create a modeled conversion. A modeled conversion is essentially an indication of quality to you. So in this instance, your investment coming through Facebook and Google, where previously didn't receive any credit, we're now firing a modeled conversion. This modeled conversion can be used for measurement. So you now understand that you've driven 2 quality visits to your website based off the thresholds and so on that we've set. But we can also take these quality visits through model conversions and send them back into Facebook and Google for enhanced optimization. I'm just going to pause there because that's typically where people get lost or have questions. So I'm more than happy to take a question now before I dig into this a little deeper. Cool. So by applying modeled conversions, we're essentially giving ourselves a couple of things. The first is visibility. Like I said, when relying on MTA, we're waiting for that final conversion to happen to understand if our investment was worth it or not. By using SegmentStream and by using model conversion modeling, we're essentially giving advertisers in real time an understanding of the quality of traffic that's coming through their paid investment. The second piece is related to targeting and optimization. As I said, an awful lot of us are investing heavily in mid and upper funnel channels like Facebook, video, programmatic, which is driving traffic to our website. We're using vanity metrics like click-through rates, cost per CPMs, conversion rates to understand and benchmark whether that's doing well or not. Through conversion modeling, we're now giving ourselves a synthetic metric that can take those valuable visits and feed that back to the publisher. So Facebook and Google are now receiving qualitative signals to understand, okay, that was a good audience. I need to now go and target those people again. So to summarize, we can now use this idea of a model conversion, this synthetic metric, to understand the impacts of upper funnel channels. It can improve performance within bidding strategies across Facebook and Google. We do have integrations with Facebook and Google and Yandex. The reasons we do that is because they're the publishers that currently have a conversions API that accepts our model conversions. TikTok and Snap are working on it. We're in close conversations with them. We can also then just simply create retargeting audiences based on the qualitative of the threshold. So if you wanted to build out additional retargeting capabilities and what you currently have within your remarketing list in Google and Facebook, that's something that we can do. And similarly across lookalike audiences. This one here is we actually get increased feedback from our more long-term clients around the ability to understand if a campaign is working well or not quickly. Often, as marketers, we're launching A/B tests. Typically, again, in our kind of mid to upper funnel channels and Facebook, we may be testing creatives, we may be looking at messaging, all of those different things. But we have to wait for a conversion to happen to understand if that's quality or not. What we can do with model conversions is give the day-to-day marketer a real-time understanding of the 1,000, 100,000 clicks that they've driven. How many of those were quality based on the design that we've set? So for most of our clients, when we come in, we would do a full assessment and audit of their program. We essentially look at the hygiene and health of their account. And from there, we can start to look at budget allocation decisions. So previously, advertisers may be investing quite heavily in Facebook. Like I said, that's done off gut decision. They've no real understanding of what the real impact of those mid and upper funnel investments are. So what we begin to do is start to visualize this qualitative traffic and say, hey, yeah, your budget allocation is a little bit off. You're slightly over investing in Facebook. So if you pull back a little bit and invest that maybe in Google search, your marketing mix will be a little more balanced. We then look at taking this idea of model conversions and feeding that back into the publishers for enhanced optimization and investment. There's an idea, a couple of logos of who we're working with. This is a really interesting space to be in. I think the takeaway for me is that because of all the reasons I kind of outlined at the beginning, whether it's multiple devices, whether it's in-app browsers, whether it's cookie restrictions related to like Apple's ITP, and we know that Google Chrome are pushing out similar. An awful lot of the solutions out there today are kind of reinventing the wheel. We're still, as marketers, we're still kind of blinkered, trying to give ourselves that true source of truth. Our CFO wants to understand, hey, I gave you 100K for marketing this month. What was the ROI on that? Like, particularly for Facebook, we're always getting challenged. Why are we investing so much in Facebook? And I just challenge you to challenge yourself around the truth that really a true source of truth no longer exists other than your actual CRM data or your ERP or whatever that real data is, that money in the bank. Any multi-touch attribution that tries to retrospectively stitch that path to purchase, for all the reasons we covered at the beginning, is currently challenged, but is only going to get worse. Thank you very much. I hope that was interesting. May have been a little bit provocative. There may be a couple of hardcore multi-touch attribution heads in the room, and we'll have a good chat over a beer. But yeah, I'll be hanging around for the afternoon. I'll be here tomorrow morning as well. But would really love if there's any questions in the room. Yeah, we've got time. We've got about 10 minutes, I think. So yeah, we have a question over here.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, quick question. Super interesting topic, so thanks so much for sharing. I have two questions. First is the change from Google Analytics to G4 going to impact you guys, and if so, how? And then the second question is, how much of the customer data do you actually get to see or work with when you're doing the AI teaching in the very beginning?
Great. So two great questions. Just in case it wasn't fully audible for everybody, firstly was around GA4. I think we're all really enjoying the migration to GA4 at the moment. It's a conversation I have nearly every day. And the second one, which I'll come to in a moment. So the transition to GA4 has absolutely no effect on us. Essentially, we integrate the behavioral data from any iteration of Google Analytics, whether it's the free version of Universal, 360, GA4, and we're actually currently in early stage conversations about scoping out what an Adobe Analytics integration would look like as well. GA4, just while we're on that topic, they have conversion modeling, right? And when I saw this, I was intrigued. It kind of did a lot of reading. But if you read it, it's still trying to be that source of truth. It's still trying to give us this report that we can go and justify all of our marketing budgets. And yes, it's using machine learning and it's using AI, etc., to try and retrospectively stitch back to one single conversion. And I just don't think it's possible. You know what I mean? So I think as marketers, we're doing ourselves an injustice saying, okay, yeah, that is our report. This is our investment. We're still going to go off gut feelings for our mid and upper channels. The second question I've forgotten. Sorry.
No worries. The question was really, how much personal data or customer data do you use for the learning phase?
So on the data that we use, what's really neat about what we're doing is we don't house any data at all. It's all your own data. So we're using your first-party behavioral data coming through GA, and then that's plugged into your own BigQuery, and you manage all of that. If you don't have a BigQuery, you don't want it, we can do that for you, but that's no problem. The events that we're using typically, so for standard e-commerce business, we'll just roll out a standardized template that's looking at essentially, we've categorical and numerical features that we're looking at. That could be time spent on page, device, screen resolution, geo, and so on. But then we're also looking at the micro events taken on site. So that could be add to cart, add to wish list, the likes of the Tesla configurator we saw earlier. That's really interesting. So typically what we do as a business when we onboard a new client is we deploy our standard list of events, and then we do what we call internally feature mining. So I have a wonderful team of customer success managers, solutions engineers, and data scientists that work with the client going through their website. So in the case of that Tesla configurator, we would go through that and we would maybe ask the client to create additional events within GA that we could use to train the model. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. Any other? Yeah.
Hi, yes. So I have a question. I hope it's not a stupid one, but
No such thing.
what's the main difference or advantage of modeled conversion versus assisted conversion?
Yeah.
Because in analytics, you can have the attribution project
Mhm.
and see conversions past a few amount of days.
Mhm.
And yeah, so if they came from paid and then the user returned from direct, you can still consider it as assisted conversion. But what's the ultimate difference?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I suppose the main difference there is that an assisted conversion, it's an acknowledgement that this interaction supported the final transaction, but it also has an awful lot of limitations within a cookie. So it's still reliant on that single cookie to be able to stitch it to that final transaction.
Yeah.
Assisted conversions are actually a metric some of our clients do use as a support. So what we're saying here with conversion modeling is that it's not a magic wand. It's not that magic thing that's all of a sudden now we can use this as a report to go back to our CFOs or our senior financial leaders to make budget justifications. But what it is it's an additional metric to help you understand the qualitative traffic. So the real difference from an assisted conversion versus a model conversion is that it'll only fire when it hits that degree of quality. So if we look at the second example here for that direct interaction, whatever that user did, they came through mobile on Chrome, but the actions they took on site weren't high enough for it to be deemed above a 15% probability to convert. So it's only at that point that we create a modeled conversion in your report for measurement, but also that signal then is sent back into Google and Facebook for optimization.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cool.